Morning, everyone. Well, we live in an age of hype cycles, I think, and last year it was Web3 and the metaverse, which we're not hearing very much of anything about this year. And this year, the news cycle is being dominated by generative AI, and it's having a particular impact on software as a service, which is essentially all software these days. And as a tech that's being hyped really, really hard right now, do you think it deserves it? Christine, you want to start?
I'm usually a skeptic. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was on stage at Web Summit like 3 or 4 years ago where I said I didn't believe in AI at that point. So I feel like I'm eating my words a little bit, but I actually am based in San Francisco, and it's sort of the epicenter of this sort of new movement for generative AI. And from what I've seen, there actually is a pretty significant leap forward in terms of user experience and functionality that wasn't there before, that we should take seriously. Pretty much everyone sort of in the Bay Area is paying close attention, and some of the smartest and deepest technologists that I know really think that this is going to drive a lot of value in the future. So I'm not going to say it's like 10 out of 10, like the hype meets the reality, but I do think there is real value there. And what's really going to kind of make the difference is how people sort of take the technology and connect it to other systems, other apps, and sort of drive real value in different use cases with it.
I think that we need to figure out how to monetize it. Otherwise, this is just going to pass on like everything else that did not get well monetized. Right now, the only entity getting paid on AI is NVIDIA. Everybody else has to bundle their stuff, and is creating this expectation that this wonderful user experience and conversational user experience that you get from like the chat GPTs or whatever's is going to be bundling your product, and you're going to be paying the same amount. When in reality, those of us who are bundling need to, remit a check back to OpenAI or Microsoft or whoever is our provider, and that's going to get expensive quick. So until we create experiences that are 10x differentiated, for which somebody wants to pay for it, it's going to be challenging. Now, I'm seeing startups creating significant experience. I forget there is a couple of companies that allow you to create web pages and marketing material using GPT, and they're monetizing it to some degree. But for the rest of us who have useful applications, I'm not seeing anyone monetizing it well, other than maybe Copilot. But that's where it stops.
Yeah.
So unless money starts flowing in a different direction, I'm not going to see a big bump here.
So what you're saying is that kind of the user expectation for sort of features has gone up, but they're not willing to pay more?
That's exactly right. The user expectation has gone up, and their wallet hasn't opened up. So while we keep that distance, that difference hits your margins. So
So there's basically 2 points that you guys are making there, and one is about the cost and one is about value, which is something that we discussed a little bit in our prep call. I want to talk about cost first, and then we can talk about whether it's worth it to the buyer.
Yeah.
So when you look at cost, as you said, there's a cost to the vendor if you're using the OpenAI API as an example, but whatever foundational model you're tying into, if you're going through their API, you're probably paying, every time somebody does an AI function in your product, right? And someone has to pay for that, and you guys are startups, you don't have oodles of money to absorb, so somebody has to pay for it. And I just want to give 2 examples of pricing that I've heard, and then I want you kind of to react to that. One is Microsoft Copilot, which I think you just mentioned, which I read in the Wall Street Journal last week was going to be $30 per user per month, over and above, which I think is the app. I mean, it depends on who you are, but the cost is like $20 per month. So it's more than double to add Copilot.
Right.
So that's Microsoft passing on their costs to their customers. Box in September, which has a Copilot kind of feature to ask questions on top of the content and do some other things. They decided to like use a token system. Like you get 20 AI functions per month. So if you ask a question about the content or you do something else, it's a token, right? And then, and we use that up. There's a company token, and then if the company uses those up, then they start charging more, right? So there's a free layer, and then they start charging. So people are experimenting with how to charge for this, but somebody's going to have to pay for it. So how do you guys think about that as software vendors, as people who are in a business?
There's a third way, which is bundling into a bigger package, which is what we're seeing, ServiceNow, Salesforce, or Workday. They create the super duper enterprise AI package that includes a bunch of functionality for which you pay X much more. But it's not, you have it, by bundling, you sort of obscure the real value and the real price. But those will be the three ways in which people are trying to make money on it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, so we're an API platform, so we have sort of a different perspective and viewpoint on this. People use Nylas together with many of these APIs to essentially connect email and calendar data to large language models. They want to customize things using the text data in those data sources. And we've been pretty, I would say, slow to move in terms of adding large language model AI features to the core platform because the space is just moving so quickly right now. And as someone who provides essentially Legos for people to snap together, we essentially have to support those Legos forever if we launch them. We don't want to jump sort of too fast on the blink because the expectations are changing so rapidly, and we sort of view our role as a platform to kind of follow the abstraction layer. And right now, it's moving too fast for us to really build in a lot of features. We have built in one feature, which is sort of a smart compose feature for essentially customizing emails that you're sending according to sort of past email history. And the approach that we take for that is really kind of the bundling approach of, if you go and sign up for a Nylas account, there's sort of the core sort of package that you can buy, and then you have to upsell to a higher package in order to use that feature. But it is true that your cost is very variable. We actually have quite a lot of experience with that because our pricing model in general is sort of per connected email, per connected calendar, and we already have the case where some people use a lot more, they send a lot more messages, they receive a lot more messages, and I think it's important to sort of map something that people understand, and then hopefully you can find a price point that kind of works for the median.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, for instance, I'm a user of GitHub right now. We get Copilot for free until they're going to start charging. My use rate of Copilot is about 25% of the suggestions get accepted on the easy languages like JavaScript, etc. Will I pay $30 per developer for Copilot? No. So there you go. So that's not going to work. So now on the consumption model side, that makes it more interesting because if I'm able to pass on the cost of the calls, just like Twilio, right, where somebody makes a call on outreach, I pay X amount to Twilio, I make margin on top of that, then we're good. I just don't know that that's an acceptable model in applications.
Yeah. Right.
When you're a provider of Legos, that's a different story. But for application providers, not so much.
I do think it has been historically an issue, even with kind of classical ML, that very sort of AI-heavy applications typically have low margins, which is tough for us in the SaaS industry where, every investor out there, if you don't have a margin of at least 75%, they're like, are you really,
exactly.
Are you really a SaaS business?
Right.
You look like a services company.
Right.
And, that hurts us in terms of valuation and kind of our ability to raise capital.
And I used to get this pushback all the time when we were early of because, we also capture email and, we took a lot of that email and we send it to annotation services internally so that we can build models on top of it. And that's expensive.
Right.
And the reason I do that is so that I can offer other things that help me differentiate in the market, such as sentiment analysis or other things on top of email. And the setup cost was pretty high, of like having all this storage and then having to use the compute to annotate, etc. So yeah, and then you look weird, right? Because your margins are not in the 75 plus, and nobody believes that you're a software company. So yeah, it's not clear to me that Box will be able to pass on the cost. I think that everybody just likes the consumption model, so they're going to try to go for it. It's not clear to me that GitHub or Microsoft is going to get paid for $30 for this thing.
Right.
It doesn't work on like the technologies that we need it to work. We're a Go shop. It doesn't work on Go. It doesn't work on like infrastructure stuff like Terraform. So like I don't know. Like it's still to me the jury's out until you either lower the cost and it makes it very accessible for the rest of us, or we figure out a way to monetize it. I don't think it's going to work. And the other point that I forgot to make is that there's also the compliance cost. So if you start embedding some of these applications, and the U.S. passes a law where you have to disclose the list of ingredients of your AI, you're not getting that from OpenAI. So like that's gonna make it difficult.
Yeah, I want to get to the regulatory kind of, what could happen in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about what you were just talking about, that you have this cost that you're absorbing as a vendor, and that was true with so-called traditional machine learning as much as it is with generative AI, right? There's a lot to building a model.
Right.
There's a lot to testing a model. There's a lot of data and movement involved, and that's expensive. So then the question is, if you're going to all this trouble to add this functionality to your software, you're building it, will they come is the question. And I think about how a lot of people use Microsoft Office, using that as an example. I mean, you have a very different product and you have a sales-oriented product, but if you think about how people use Microsoft Office, most people are not power users. They have this kind of very narrow area of functionality that they use, that they know how to use, and they don't go outside of that. Now, theoretically, if they could figure out how to take advantage of that AI, it might make them discover more or be able to ask questions of the software. But if they're not adventurous, or they don't know how, or they're afraid to, will they take advantage of that software? And you've made this investment. So you're trying to add value. If the customers don't take advantage of value, how do you kind of train them? Like, this is in the software. You guys should be using this, because it's kind of a deliberate use case. It's like you have to kind of know to ask. Whereas previously, if you asked, like, tell me the customer is most likely to churn, well, AI would come up with that answer, but most people wouldn't know AI was, producing that answer and wouldn't care because it was all on the back end.
Right.
The customer has to do something. So how do you kind of change the way your customers think about software?
So let me take a crack at that. So before buying something, like for instance, let's say that there's two competing products, me and somebody else, and I make a claim that I have AI and the other product doesn't. Nothing stops the other product from saying I have it too, right? So pre-facto, to the eyes of the customers, they both look the same. Now, once you get into the experiences, if one have a GPT type of AI and the other one has an older generation type of AI, it's not obvious right away that one does and the other one doesn't, because they're both going to answer questions. One is going to answer it more wrong than the other. And then so at some point, the user of this product over time will stop using the AI because it's just wrong, whereas the user of this product will continue using the AI because it's right. They both got paid the same thing, because to the eyes of the customer, they both have AI, so they're willing to pay the same amount, except for this one uses a GPT bot that costs a lot more than this one that uses a non-GPT bot that costs a lot less. You see what I mean? So the equation still doesn't work. So unless there is a way for us to truly, like, when Intel and say Dell partner, Intel had that Intel Inside, program that you knew that you were getting an Intel kind of PC, and they run their own marketing campaigns to sort of say Intel is great. So what's the equivalent in software for that, where I can say I have GPT inside and that makes me great, versus this other thing? So I don't know, but
yeah, one thing we've definitely seen in our perspective as a platform is that there is like no standard way to talk about quality right now, and that makes it hard to talk to customers.
Right. Because anyone, like, nothing
Like, how do
stops
you
anybody
say
else to make a claim.
my version is better than
Right,
you know,
exactly.
X?
Everybody says AI, everybody can say anything you want. So it becomes this race to the bottom, right?
And it's
where, like,
quite a complex topic because it's a probabilistic technology, and so it's like, well, 90% of the time you're going to get a good answer, something like that.
Right.
But it's hard to objectively measure.
Right. So back to nobody's getting paid.
Yeah.
So I mean, that sort of brings up a couple of issues, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is that if a person who is not familiar with these kinds of technology uses this technology, you know, your average office worker, and gets burned by a bad answer, right? A hallucinated answer.
Yeah.
Are they ever going to trust this technology again, or will they go back and say, well, this was a one-off and I can continue to use it? I'm wondering, you know, you have a way, you talked about like asking questions of the data that's moving through your API. It could be tremendously powerful, but if a user got a wrong answer, like, you know, that kind of breaks trust with you as a company and with the user and just AI technology in general.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much all features built using sort of the latest large language model technology, they still need to be human in the loop, because even like the best of these models out there, you know, hallucinates at a rate of 3%, which is actually kind of a lot. So I think the user interfaces are really important. So we have over 1,000 customers who have built various different apps, and pretty much all of them want to integrate some AI technology in some way or another, and we've been having a lot of conversations with them about what that looks like. And you know, I see it kind of as a continuation of sort of the long history of software, where, you know, it's always just been about automating things with computers, automating workflows, and pattern matching at scale. Like, computers are so much better at sifting through huge amounts of data than we are, and large language models allow sort of us to do crazy things with essentially like the entire textual contents of the internet, which is cool. But it's not something that, you know, anybody should be building things where, you know, you just push a button and the computer is handling everything from end to end. We find that it's most helpful for people to sort of, you know, make a suggestion and have the person edit and send. You don't want to do something without sort of the consent, and also surfacing up actions and insights. That's the kind of thing where, like, I think if it is wrong, it's not catastrophic, and you should assume that in some cases it is going to be very, very wrong, and design the user interface to sort of handle that case.
You know, just to follow up on that, the idea that it could be wrong, and then a person uses that wrong information, say, in a report. It's not catastrophic, but it could have a negative impact on the business. And people are kind of getting back to the hype question, right? People are kind of being led to believe that this is almost magical, right? I ask a question, I get this answer back. It's like, it makes it so much easier. I mean, if it's giving wrong answers that could put business at risk, that's reputational for you as a vendor. So how much do you have to explain that to customers, and how much can you rely on the fact that customers won't get lazy and just say, oh, this is magic, I'm just going to accept the answer?
I don't know. I think it's I haven't seen that catastrophic, you know, error problem.
Right.
Like,
Not yet.
yeah, maybe not yet. I mean, we do, you know, we do have to fight the problem of whatever you're using the LLM for needs to be roughly right and accurate. So, for instance, one of the things that we do is that right now we're using GPT to inspect calls and deals, right? Which is easy because you take the corpus of a transcript, feed it to the LLM, and then you can inquire. So there's two issues with that. One is that you may ask how the call went, and the model is liable to hallucinate and to give you something wrong. So you have to sort of like overweight the facts of what happened during the call, and then instead of giving you a summary of the call, you want to be able to give you a summary with the links back to where that action happened, so that
Right.
you can actually track it.
Right.
So that's how you solve that problem to some degree. The problem that we cannot solve is the following. I have two types of reps. Reps that are very young in career and reps that are very senior in career, just for the easy example. The young in career sales rep will actually answer the question. So when we ask the question, how are you different than X? So what is your pricing model? The rep will just answer the question. It will be right there. So the model can easily identify that the question was answered when it was answered because it's right next to it. A more senior rep will take you down a yarn of story and will tell you about something about another customer and how the pricing went and answer the question about 5 minutes later. That context window is too long for the LLM to understand.
Right.
So when you answer the question to the LLM, did the rep, how did the rep handle the question? The LLM will come back and say he didn't. When in reality it did happen, it just couldn't fit into the context window.
Right.
You see what I mean? So like,
Yes.
is that bad? No. Is annoying? Yes.
So we only
kind of
have like a
ironic, eh?
minute and
Yeah.
a half left. I just very quickly want you to answer a very complicated question about the danger of pushing ahead when regulation could kind of come in, as you referred to earlier, and make what you needed to do a lot more complicated.
Sorry, I missed.
I'm
the
talking
question.
about regulation, making things complicated after you've already created a solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think my opinion is the U.S. is moving way prematurely on regulation, and it's too early to make the rules because we don't really know what the end game is going to be. And the goal of regulation is to prevent really bad things from happening, and like they haven't really happened yet. So why are we trying to make rules?
Yeah.
So I suspect that I hope that there's going to be a good old sort of very intense debate around what sort of regulation is sort of necessary, and that I hope that in the U.S. we'll back off a bit because it's too early.
So I got 2 points on that. So first of all, it's impacting business right now. Because what is about to happen in Europe, the companies in the U.S. have to react almost before it happens. So I don't know if you've read this, but Amazon canceled all their software providers if they had AI into their products,
Right.
and they demanded a review. So that's luckily we don't sell to Amazon, but if you do, that will be annoying. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, guys. This has been a super interesting discussion. I'm sure it's the very beginnings of what we're going to be discussing in the future, but at least it got us started on some of the big topics that companies like yours face when they're trying to implement this technology. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.